Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we are very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. I would like to thank Bill Flick for sitting in last week for me. I had quite an ordeal going on, which I'm going to get into a little bit with you. But I want to thank Bill. Bill is very, very knowledgeable. Bill is a patriot. Bill is a very concerned person about the future of our nation and what we are leaving for future generations. Thank you, Bill, and hopefully we'll get you back on the show. You and I can have a conversation and cover some of the ground that you touched on. Folks, I also want to speak to you a little bit about the experience that I went through with, as some of you know, with a court case. And basically what it was, folks, is that people came on our property that my wife and I are tenants to. Please take notice of my language. I did not say that we were our owners. My friends, we do not own anything, okay? We own nothing, zero. Anything that you have a certificate of title or a certificate fill in the blank, you do not own it. And I will tell you that anything that has a certificate, it has been registered to the owner. For instance, your vehicle, car, truck, whichever. You register that vehicle because you do not have in your possession the what's called the MOI, which has to do with the manufacturer's MIO, manufacturer's instrument of origination. What it is that the state fill in the blank has possession of that MIO and manufacturer's instrument of origination. And what it is that they are giving you permission to use it because you do not own it. So they give you a certificate of title. They own it. They're giving you permission to use it. Okay. If you look at your license plate, and I don't care what state you're from, if you take your license plate and put it in the proper sunlight, in the center of that license plate, you will see what's called an endorsement. And you have to look real suddenly. You have to play with the sunlight a little bit, but you'll see like this imprint into the license plate. That is the endorsement of the owner giving you permission, like you endorse a check to a third party to cash it. That's exactly what that is. Your land. We do not have we have certificate of title. We do not have allodial titles as we used to in this nation. We used to have allodial title. Allodial is Latin for absolute. It was yours. Hence, that's why I say that we are tenants. Please, folks, get your deeds out to your land. You are either a tenant in common, or a joint tenant, but either way, you are a tenant. You have no standing of ownership with this property. This is why you have people come on your property, what you think is your property, they come on their property, they send their assessors to come on their property to see what you have done to improve their property with your sweat equity, and then they tax you because you made improvements on their property. So when I say to you that I am particular with my language about this, that my wife and I are tenants to this property, but the state of Vermont, and this is every state in the country, my friends, every state in the country. But the state of Vermont has a policy called open land use. In other words, anybody can come on the land that you falsely believe you own and make use of it. Anybody. They do not, in the state of Vermont, they do not need your permission to go on your land. The liability is on the tenant of the property to post it and then to register it as such as being posted. All the responsibility, all the liability is placed on the tenant of the land. Now, in my case, and I don't want to get into a lot of particulars, but in my case, the state police saw the signs, the game warden saw the signs. These people saw the signs, but what they did was they got on the internet and went to the site that the state of Vermont puts out for people who have registered the tenant's land as posted. You see, when you pay $5,100 a year in property taxes, it doesn't give you the benefits, because we don't have land rights, we have land benefits. Rights are unalienable, not unalienable. They don't come from some Martian on Mars. They're unalienable. It's a defined word, unalienable. They cannot be taken away or altered, as in a document that I'm about to read to you shortly. So these folks, who, by the way, were hunter safety instructors, and one of them had just been put on the Gaming Commission Board by the governor, saw that and this ignorance cost me, friends. Ignorance cost me. I was not aware, with all the studying that I do, I was not aware that you have to register, the tenant has to register the land and pay a fee to do it, to have the protection of the benefit of people not just coming on your land and making use of it. So when I ignorantly did not do that, they, even though the signs were there, went on the land. Of course, they accused me of taking my gun and pointing it at them and threatening me and all this other bull dung. I won't get into too much of all that. But this has been an incredible experience for me, a horrifying experience for myself and my wife. And I don't want to see any other Vermonter, or any other American for that purpose, go through this process. And a lot of you I know, because I have had phone calls from all over the state, and also due to the show of Bill putting it on the internet, and I'm very thankful for that, all over the country for that matter. And I know a lot of you are quite upset with me. And you're upset with me because I agreed to a plea deal. And I want you to understand something, my friends. I wanted to fight this, but I do not have the purse strings of the state of Vermont. And what do I mean by that? If we got into a hung jury situation, the state of Vermont and all the above was going to continually come at me with another court appearance, another court appearance, another court appearance, another court appearance. Folks, I do not have thousands of dollars to do that. I don't have that. As my attorney said to me, Tom, if you go into a hung jury, all it takes is one person to go against the others, and you got a hung jury, and it's just going to a continuous process. Folks, I do not have the purse strings to compete with the purse strings of the state of Vermont. I just don't have it. And the other thing was the decision making was placed into my hands. And I know a lot of you are very disappointed that I've done this. I am very upset this whole thing took place. I am very upset about the open land use policies of the state of Vermont. And I am sorry if I disappointed you, but I am speaking about this because I don't want you to lose faith in what we're trying to do here, which is to educate the American people about the status of our nation. The reason why I do this, the reason why Stanley has done this from day one, the reason why Bill has done this is because of the fact that we have educated ourselves, and we are hoping that through education we can provide remedy to the people. But it's not just me, Stanley, and Bill, folks. For us to get remedy for ourselves, it has to be an effort, a collective effort of all of us. So what I am going to be doing is I'm going to be forming an organization. I'm in the midst of it now. And I thought about all kind of names. Like one of them was LOST, an acronym, L period, O period, S period, T period. And it was going to stand for Landowners Standing Together. But that's wrong, because we are not landowners. I invite you, please, please, get your deeds out. You are a tenant in common, or a joint tenant. You have no standing of ownership on your land, on your vehicles, on anything. As a matter of fact, my friends, and we've gone on this in the show many times, we are literally chattel. Movable property which has been liened. That's what chattel is. Movable property which has been liened. And you say, well, Tom, how can that be? Because you have a birth certificate, don't you? My friends, I brought this in many, many years ago, and I read it to you verbatim. I was born 11/10/58. I was bonded by the Midwest Bank Note Company on 11/12/58, not only creating and putting me in a status of chattel, because I'm movable, I am property, and I have been liened, but also creating in law what's called an artificial corporate entity known as a nom de guerre. And we have done shows upon shows about the breakdown of this. So what I am going to be doing in the future to try to provide remedy, and this has to be a joint effort, my friends. It cannot just be me doing this. If we're going to have effect to create remedy for all of us, it has to be all of us involved, which means getting you off the couch. So I'm going to be forming an organization, and it's going to be an educational organization called TET. Tenants educating themselves. And I want to stop right there on that, but I want you to understand that the reasons why I agreed to this plea agreement. And I want you also to know I did not plead guilty. I pleaded no contest, which is not the same as pleading guilty. Okay, enough said on that matter, but I want to thank you all for your support. I am not exaggerating when I tell you I have had between, 45 and 60 people communicate with me through various means. And I would say about 80% of you are quite disappointed in myself and quite disturbed that I accepted a plea bargain and did not go forward with a continuous, long-term, financially and emotionally draining battle that I just don't have the purse strings to go forward with. Enough said. Okay. But what I did see while I was in the courts was a lot of symbols of the people who do control the courts. Everywhere I went, I saw BAR, B-A-R, B-A-R, BAR, BAR, BAR. British Accreditation Registry. That's right, my friends. Our court systems are controlled, as we broke down with you many times, by a foreign guild. And that all happened, as we have gone before, and we're going to read the dates again. Our laws changed in 1933. But what did the Frankfurt School say about our laws? Number 8, the 8th tenet. An unreliable legal system with bias against the victims of crime. And I got a first-hand experience of that, didn't I? Okay, let us continue. I want to speak about this young lady right here, Jennifer Janes. Now, Jennifer, Stanley, if we could bring it over to the other so they can see the picture. Thank you. Jennifer was an author. You already know I said was, as in past tense. Was an author who wrote books in story novel fiction and was quite successful with it, with getting hardcore information out in a novel setting. And she was writing books, as she called it the vaccine deep state. She used all kind of hard defined truth information and put it into a novel, series of novels that brought a lot out, and it was a big hit. It was on USA Today's bestseller list and many other accolades that she had. Well, just recently, in the time period that I was 2 weeks ago from when I was here before, Jennifer was found with 2 bullet holes in her head, and her death was ruled a suicide. You already knew that, though, didn't you? How many times have I reported to you about people who have fought the vaccines or any part of the system and with multiple gunshot wounds to their head, and it's ruled a suicide? Well, my friends, I spent decades, literally decades, from the 70s to 2015 in EMS. And I will tell you there are some characteristics of how certain types of people, and you can break it down to gender, and I'm going to do it just gender on this one, how they commit suicide. Women do not usually commit violent suicides. Men will take a gun and put it to their heads or put it underneath their mandible and extinguish themselves. They'll commit suicides that way. Not to be crude, but they either put it in their head, they put it in their mouth, or they put it underneath their mandible, their chin. That's how men commit suicide. Women very, very seldom will commit violent suicide. But when they do shoot themselves, and it's extremely rare, but when they do, they'll take the gun and they'll shoot their heart. They never, ever destroy or mess up, if you would, or disconfigure their cranium, their head, their face. They never do. Never. What they usually do is they will do things like carbon monoxide poisoning and fall asleep and die. Or they'll take an overdose of pills. Again, non-violent suicide is what I mean by this. They'll take an overdose of pills and they'll commit suicide that way. That's how women commit suicide. And there's historical data to qualify that. But this young lady, a successful author who was exposing the vaccine industry and what they are, and more importantly, what they are not, was found dead through 2 bullet holes in her head, and it was ruled a suicide. Let us go forward. Mr. Huxley. The perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of a democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls in which the prisoners would not even dream of escaping. It would essentially be a system of slavery where, through consumption and entertainment, the slaves would love their servitude. Let's get another quote from Mr. Huxley. This is a speech that he did in 1962 in Berkeley, California. It seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this: that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy who have always existed and presumably will always exist to get people to love their servitude. You know what? I have to read that again. This is 1962, my friends. It seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now, 1962, faced is precisely this: that we are in the process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy who have always existed and presumably will always exist to get people to love their servitude. That's exactly where we are, my friends. Now, let's go back and read some other quotes. Mr. James Madison. History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling its money and its issuance. Has anything changed? And this is what the revolution is, what Ben Franklin said the revolution was really about. was really about the controlling of the issuance of the money. Yes, the taxation. Yes, without representation. Yes, the taking of guns. The taking of the guns was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the core understanding with knowledge that the money changers, the international bankers, even back in the day of the founding of our country, the core reason for the people to get together and revolt against their mother country was because the bankers controlling the issuance of their, at that time it was script, which is what we have now. We have script, notes of a private, for-profit banking corporation. This is what we have. We do not have money. We have read the Coinage Acts to you, particularly the one of 1789. We read to you what a dollar is. We don't have dollars anymore. There's no gold. There's no silver backing our medium of exchange. All there is ledger entries with an interest bond due to these international bankers who have confiscated all our wealth, which gets us back to my problem with the land. Because Senate Document 43, March 9th, 1933, plainly states from the congressional record that all land is in the state and subordinate to the necessities of the state. Let us go on. Sir Josiah Stamp, former president of the Bank of London. The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. Whoa. Whoa. Did you hear that? What did I just say to you earlier? That this is nothing but ledger entries. All the intrinsic wealth of our money system, folks, has been confiscated and it's gone. And you're a co-surety to the interest bond due, because it's perpetual debt. Because, okay, you print $1, they're not dollars, they're Federal Reserve notes, but you call them dollars because we're ignorant of our money system. As Henry Ford said as well, the American people do not understand our banking or money system, for if they did, I fear there'd be a revolution by morning. That was in 1933. Why are we not taught this in the public fool system? Because they want to keep us fools. So here's the president of the Bank of England telling you what the modern banking system is. It manufactures money out of nothing. Folks, it's not money. Because when we read our Black's Law Dictionary what money was, money does not encompass debt or notes, because a note is in acknowledgement of debt. Let's go on with Mr. Stamp. The process is perhaps the most astounding piece of sleight of hand that was ever invented. Banking was conceived in inequity and born in sin. Bankers own the earth, and they do. Take it away from them, but leave them in power to create money, and with a flick of a pen, they will create enough money to buy it all back again. Take this great power away from them, and all the great fortunes like mine will disappear. For then this would be a better and happier world to live in. But if you want to continue to be slaves of bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, then let the bankers continue to create money and control credit. This is from the president of the Bank of England. So, when I say to you that we are financing our own demise, my friends, I really mean it. We are financing our own demise. I'm going to read that quick again. The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. The process is perhaps the most astounding piece of sleight of hand that was ever invented. Banking was conceived in inequity and born in sin. Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave them in power to create money. And with a flick of a pen, they will create enough money to buy it all back again. Take their great power away from them, and all great fortunes like mine will disappear, for then this would be a better and happier world to live in. But if you want to continue to be slaves of bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, then let the bankers continue to create money and control credit. Unbelievable. And this is the gist of our problem, my friends. This is the gist of it. Listen to Congressman Larry P. McDonald. You know Larry P. McDonald. His plane with his entire staff, was shot down by the Russians, the Korean airline 007. Larry P. McDonald, who, by the way, folks, was a Democrat. You'll never find any Democrat today talking about this. The only one who would have in the past was Jim Traficant. And they put him in a federal pen for it when he went on the congressional record, and we've read his speech to you verbatim many times. And then he wound up getting out of prison. He continued his quest to educate the American people, and he died under very mysterious circumstances. Congressman Larry P. McDonald. This is from October of 1975. The Rockefellers and their allies have, for at least 50 years, been carefully following a plan to use their economic power to gain political control of first America and then the rest of the world. Folks, they have done it. It's complete. Do I mean conspiracy? Yes, I do. Oh, this guy must have been a wacko, huh? He must be one of them wacko conspiracy theorists. I am convinced there is such a plot, international in scope, and generations old, in planning, and incredibly evil in intent. Unbelievable. How about this one? Edward Bernays, from his book Propaganda. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government which is the true ruling power of our country. Let me read that again to you. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. And what did Mr. Huxley say? That the perfect dictatorship would have an appearance of a democracy. We're not a democracy, folks. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the, fill in the blank for me. Democracy for which it stands? No. For the republic for which it stands. What is a republic? A republic is when all are equal under law. And we know that's not true. Look at all the crimes that have gone on, as you've come to know it as the swamp. Not a drop of it has been drained. Not one single drop. Why? Because President Trump does not have control. But would basically be a prison without walls in which the prisoners, that's you and I, would not even dream of escaping. It would essentially be a system of slavery where, through consumption and entertainment, the slaves would love their servitudes. Theogen Fay Yerschel. The secularist vision requires complete destruction of the old. Read Christianity, including nations, institutions, faith, and even historical memory itself. Hence, for instance, the constant attacks on the Christian church and on the reality and on the concept of a nation and then human beings. Devotion to faith, family, and nation is not only suspect, but will be considered positively injurious. Isn't that where we're at right now? All right. I'm going to stop there, my friends. I want to read a couple of quotes to you. Men are born ignorant, not stupid. They are made stupid by education. That's Bertrand Russell. And Bertrand Russell was one of the orchestrators, along with John Dewey and others, of the modern education read indoctrination system. The kids can't count change back to you, my friends, but they're teaching 5-year-olds how to masturbate. They're having registered sex offenders and people convicted of pedophilia dressing up in garb as women, showing their genitalia to school children at a very high cost to you and I may add. And this makes sense to you? It makes perfect sense to me because I understand what they're doing. I understand why they're doing it. I understand what their goal and what their end game is all about. This makes perfect sense to me. Hell, they've lowered every standard they could, even for teachers. They give you a school system that doesn't work. What was the third tenet of the Frankfurt School? I'll read it to you. Masturbation propaganda in schools combined with the homosexualization of children and their corruption by exposing them to child porn in the classroom. That's what's happening. And you know what really blows my mind? You got parents gleefully bringing their kids to these events and clapping about it. And what was the fourth tenet while we're speaking about schools, the Frankfurt School? The systematic undermining of parental and teachers' authority. Your child can't get an aspirin without getting parental permission. But your child, up to 12 years old, can have an abortion without any notification to the parent. Does that make sense to you? Makes perfect sense to me when I understand what they're doing. Folks, the education system, I hate calling it that, but the education system in this country is not a failure. The education system in this country is a complete success on what it was geared to do. At a very high cost to you and I will add. And this has all been put in place by the bankers. Let us continue. Louis T. McFadden, it was a carefully contrived occurrence. International bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair so that they might emerge the rulers of us all. Are they the rulers of us all? I would think they are. They control the lack of money system. They own everything. We're a co-surety to the debt through an instrument called the birth certificate. They've taken away a loyal title in this country. They control the courts. They control the politicians. They control it all. They are the rulers of us all. Let us continue. Louis T. McFadden, Congressional Record 12595-12603, 10 June 1932. Mr. Chairman, we have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Banks. The Federal Reserve Board, a government board, has cheated the government of the United States out of enough money to pay the national debt. My friends, he was wrong here. The Federal Reserve Board is not a government board. And we've got into that many, many times with you. And he has made comments about that post-1932, before they murdered him. This man was murdered. He was poisoned to death. The depredations and the inequities of the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks acting together have cost this country enough money to pay the national debt several times over. This evil institution has impoverished and ruined the people of the United States, has bankrupted itself, and has practically bankrupted our government. It has done this through defects of the law under which it operates, through the maladministration of that law by the Federal Reserve Board, and through the corrupt practices of the moneyed vultures who control it. Barry Goldwater, 1965. Most Americans have no real understanding of the operation of the international money lenders. The accounts of the Federal Reserve System have never been audited, and in 2019 they still haven't. It operates outside the control of Congress and manipulates the credit of the United States. Now, Mr. Charles Lindbergh, who was a senator, Minnesota, and by the way, the father of the famous aviator, he presented a document which is in the congressional record, and I'm going to read it to you. And I've read this before, but it just puts it all together, folks, of what went on and what's going on today. Like I said, the reason why we do this show is to connect yesterday's history to today's events. Let us read this. This is presented from the congressional record. And this was presented by the congressional record, revealed by U.S. Congressman Charles A. Lindbergh, who you see on the screen, in 1917. Now, this document is called the Bankers' Manifesto of 1892. That's right, folks. The bankers have a manifesto. We, the bankers, not we, I'm adding the bankers, must proceed with caution and guard every move made. For the lower order of people. Who do you think the lower order of people are? You and I. We are the lower order of people. The lower order of people are already showing signs of restless commotion. Prudence will therefore show a policy of apparently yielding to the popular will until our plans are so far consummated that we can declare our designs without fear of any organized resistance. That is what's going on today. They denied the New World Order. We were a bunch of wackos who thought there was a New World Order, even though it's on the Federal Reserve note, Novus Ordo Seclorum. If you're a novice in something, what are you folks? You're new. This is all Latin. Ordo, order. Seclorum is where we get the word secular from, means of the world. New order of the world. It's right there on the seal on the back of the Federal Reserve note, but we're all wackos for thinking that. Let us continue. Now to save us, they're introducing themselves. That's what's going on. The Farmers Alliance and Knights of Labor organizations in the United States should be carefully watched by our trusted men. And we must take immediate steps to control these organizations in our interest or disrupt them. Folks, the Farmers Alliance and Knights of Labor were early stages of unions. And the Farmers Alliance was very part of the Midwestern banks because they had an alliance with banking institutions so they could get credit on their crops before the crops matured and were harvested. This is what the farmers' depression of 1920 and 21 was about. And it was targeted just to the farmers because while the crops were in field, they held intrinsic value, even before they were harvested, because you could get credit on them. Understand this. At the upcoming Omaha Convention to be held on July 4th, 1892, our men must attend and direct its movement, or else there will be set on foot such antagonism to our designs as may require force to overcome. And where are they going to get that force? Because, my friends, in 1892, we still had the type of defense that we were supposed to have in this country, which was not a standing military, but militias, true militias. So their force would have had to come from courts. It would have had to come from policing forces. And understand that there was not any state police forces at that point. Most of your state police forces came in the 1930s when everything changed in this country. Let's continue. This at the present time would be premature. Why? Because they hadn't consolidated all the military or policing forces in our country, because the only law enforcement at that point was the only true law enforcement constitutional authority that we were supposed to have, which is sheriffs and their deputies, because sheriffs are what? They are elected. The control of law enforcement was what? In the hands of the people voting. There were no state police. There were federal police involved in territories, enclaves, and districts, but the states in 1892 were still sovereign. There were no districts of Vermont, districts of Rhode Island like there are right now. And I know many of you saying, what is this fool talking about? There ain't a district of Vermont. I invite you to go on the internet, just punch in district, fill in the state, it'll come up. So they didn't have complete, they had a lot of control of the courts, but not complete control of the courts yet. So the task of force, political force, of physical force, they had not harnessed that power yet. Let us continue. We are not yet ready for such a crisis. And why are they not ready for that crisis? Because of what I just explained. Capital must protect itself in every possible manner through a combination of conspiracy and legislation. This is their own document. But you're a conspiracy wacko if you believe there is a conspiracy. The courts must be called to our aid. Debts must be collected. Bonds and mortgages foreclosed as rapidly as possible. Now, this is 1892. Then you had the Panic of 1898, you had the Panic of 1904, and the Panic of 1908. All of them were orchestrated by these bankers to create chaos, to create that Hegelian dialectic that we speak of so many times. Crisis, reaction, solution. Let's continue. When through the process of the law, the common people have lost their homes, they will be more tractable and easily governed. Governed. What does the word governed mean? To control. You know what the word government means? Govern, to control, meant, mind. Control mind, government. Let us continue. When through the process of the law, the common people have lost their homes. What did I explain to you in the beginning of this with Senate Document 43? You, me, we own nothing. We have lost control and possession of all of our property. All of it. The common people have lost their homes. They will be more tractable and easily governed through the influence of the strong arm of government applied to a central power of imperial wealth under the control of the leading financiers. Folks, this is their words, not mine. And this is 1892. People without homes will not quarrel with their leaders. History repeats itself in regular cycles. This truth is well known among our principled men who are now engaged in forming an imperialism of the world. While they are doing this, the people must be kept in a state of political antagonism. What do they mean by that? What that means, folks, when you break this document down, is that they must get us quarreling amongst ourselves. Whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's economic status, whether it's status, whatever. Divide the people. Political antagonism. They cannot, the one thing that they really fear when you read all their white papers from the 1600s to last week, the one thing they really fear, believe it or not, is us. Not you, not me, us. Let us continue. The question of tariff reform must be urged through the organization known as the Democratic Party. No surprises there, is there? Who put NAFTA into play? The Democratic Party. Who put CAFTA into play? The Democratic Party. Not that the Republicans are much better. They all went along with them, believe me. And the question of protection and with the reciprocity must be forced to view through the Republican Party. Now, how could they do that? Because they control both parties, my friends. By thus dividing the voters, again, that political antagonism, we can get them to expand their energies in fighting over questions of no importance to us except as teachers to the common herd. Who do you think the common herd is? That's you and I. And what are they doing? Dividing the voters. And folks, how many voters are there now in the country? When I say voters, I mean who actively vote. The percentages are scaringly low. We can get them to expand their energies in fighting over questions of no importance to us except as teachers to the common herd. Thus, by discreet action, what does it mean to be discreet? To be not known, to be kept secret. We can secure all that has been so generously planned and successfully accomplished. Revealed by this gentleman right here, Congressman Charles A. Lindbergh, Sr., U.S. Congress, 1917. Now, after the bank has gained control, they wrote another manifesto. This is known as the Bankers' Manifesto of 1934. And I don't have the time, folks. I'm going to read a small portion of this to you. Capital must protect itself in every way. Capital, my friends, is the money system. Capital is possessions. Capital is those who control the possessions. Capital, the bankers, must protect itself in every way, through combination and through legislation. Debts must be collected and loans and mortgages foreclosed on as soon as possible. What happened during the Great Depression? All the call options were put into play. Every call option on every mortgage and every loan was activated. They did exactly that. And by the way, my friends, have you ever broke down the word mortgage? What's the morgue? What is the morgue? Death. That's what the word means. It's French. Friends, the word mortgage means death pledge. Let us continue. Went through a process of law. So how do they know this? Because they control the legislators that create the law. They control the courts that implement the law. The whole system's corrupted, every bit of it. Just like we talked about, they were going to make it in the Frankfurt School documentary. Remember, they were going to make it so corrupted as to be darkened, to use their words. When through a process of law the common people have lost their homes, they will be more tractable and more easily governed by the strong arm of the law, applied by the central power of wealth under control of leading financiers. People without homes will not quarrel with their leaders. This is well known among our principal men now engaged in forming its imperialism of capital to govern the world. By dividing the people, we can get them to expend their energies in fighting over questions of no importance to us. Folks, this is basically just like the one of 1892, but now they have the mechanisms to control it and implement this global hemorrhage of the bankers. Thus, by discrete action, we can secure for ourselves what has been generally planned and now successfully accomplished. Senate Document 43. All property is in the state and subordinate to the necessities of the state. And this, my friends, is why we have open land policies in the state of Vermont. And I want you to think of something. Someone doesn't need your permission to go on what you perceive to be your property. But let me ask you a question. Let's say somebody, without your permission, got hurt on your property. Who do you think has the potential to be liable for the injury? The tenant of the property. And if you say, oh, no way, well, how about this part of it? You know you're going to get sued. It's what we do in America today. What is it? I forget the stat. We read it last year. 92 or 91% of all lawsuits originate in the United States. Globally. So best case scenario, you're going to wind up putting out thousands and thousands of dollars to protect yourself in court from the liability of injury from someone who was trespassing on property that you perceive to own. Does this sound like we're in a status of land of the free to you? And the only way, my friends, that we're going to create remedy for all of us is what I just said. All of us. That's the only way. You can sit here and watch me present this information to you, and that's great. Myself, Stanley, and Bill, we're very thankful that you do watch this program. And there are a lot of you out there, and we're thankful. But the only way we're going to provide remedy, my friends, is by uniting and by not fighting over quarrels that have no importance to these international bankers that are keeping us in a state of political antagonism over matters which are of no importance to them except to be teachers to the common herd. Because us lower order of people are exactly that. We are living in a state of ignorance, entertainment, consumption, which has brought us into a statehood of apathy. And we have to shake off the shackles and the chains of apathy to create remedy for all of us. So, my friends, I was going to read to you a segment of the Declaration of Independence, and I do not have time. We'll have to do that next week. I was also going to read some other quotes to you and some other, but I don't have time. My friends, we are extremely thankful for you watching this program. I want to thank all of you again for your support during my horrific experience in the court system. And I hope I have brought some enlightenment to you as to why I accepted the terms that I did. My friends, again, we're very thankful you watch our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, obtain knowledge, manifest kindness to your fellow man, And we always close on reminding you that your government is your responsibility, and we thank you for watching.
Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is very simple, very hard to find.